Welcome to the Nuclear Snail channel, where I have turned my old frying pan into the central piece of my costume. In this video I will show you how I did it, but before that, as usual, let us talk about the design aspects of this. Now, some of you have seen this armor before. Well, armor. I guess it's technically a baseball catcher's chest armor, which I have long since turned into a post-apocalyptic piece. And this time I'm adding this frying pan on top of it. So you will notice that here I have cut out some parts of it. This used to be covered before and it hindered my movement just a tiny bit. Not a lot because, it's padding, it's soft, but it was still not very comfortable moving my arm here. A good test for armor mobility for me, or one of the tests, is being able to do this. So grabbing the opposite shoulder with each hand, and now I can do that here. I've also cut out a small piece, and you will see that this frying pan also echoes that line. So an echo is a very common design element. It's when some lines or some colors or anything else really repeats. And these are not exactly the same, they are kind of slanted, focusing the whole composition into the center. So this is kind of fatter, and this gets really slim here, kind of really emphasizing how slim the central piece is. I think the negative space right here is a really good contrast. I don't know why I called it negative space. Technically it might be. Anyway, this part right here emphasizes and has a nice interplay with this central piece. Now to the central piece, the center of the central piece, you will see I've added some 3D detail. 3D not as in 3D printed, those are metal pieces. This is actually a thread cutter that I no longer need, actually found it in my junk crate. And it serves like a nice centerpiece here. And this here is some sort of a middle round part for the middle. And I've also, of course, added a colorful highlight here. You will see in the making of pictures how I did it. I don't know what this even is, some sort of a plastic ring or whatever. So I did that because in the middle of this there were some like frying pan logos, and I didn't want to keep that as the center. I wanted it to be more neutral. It could be cool as a joke, but like to keep like a frying pan instructions or whatever. But here I think this looks really cool despite being a frying pan. In the real apocalypse, which is really not that important for us making costumes, but in the real apocalypse, this would be a kind of thing that people do, because this might stop some like knife or whatever, or some arrow if it doesn't have too much energy. Again, as usual, a word of caution: never actually use something like this as protective gear, nor try to test it out how much it would protect, because chances are you're just gonna get injured if you do so, or injure somebody or destroy something. But like realistically, they would be still using something like this, because a frying pan, you can find it anywhere. It is a solid chunk of metal, so it's one hell of a lot better to wear this and being hit by something than wear nothing. So while this is not like the best armor, this is something. This does tell a great visual story, because this central bright metallic piece right here, it is a really nice contrast to the outer black parts of the frying pan and of this padding here, this catcher's padding. I think also from the side it gives a nice three-dimensional structure. It's not just flat. As you can see here, I haven't bent the the frying pan out completely. I have flattened it a lot, but it still retains some of the curvature to accommodate my chest, which also curves out. So if you have the type of body where the chest doesn't curve out but the belly does, you can emphasize that. On a really massive guy, this would still look cool, maybe like as a part of a belt or something like this. So this can be used in a lot of ways. And I also have a big frying pan here, a lot larger than this, which would be not comfortable to wear on the chest. And you could totally make some sort of a back piece from that, so frying pans. Now, do I have any more design things about it? Oh yeah, I do. You will notice that this, for whatever reason, like on the frying pan, this line right here was not aligned with the handle, which is probably because it's not important for its function or whatever, and they weren't exactly like expecting anyone to make an armor from this. But like, you will notice this, and if you're the right or the wrong kind of person, this might be really irking you now that you have seen it. For me, it was like, this whole piece is kind of asymmetric. You see that there is a lot of asymmetry going here. There isn't just enough symmetry going on for this not to look super awful, but there is also some asymmetry going on. I'm not really sure if it's really hard to pull off or not, but keep this in mind. Like, yes, you should strive for some, as I usually say, non-chaotic elements that bring in some order, but don't be obsessive about it. Because stuff like this, you look at it at first and second and third glance, it's fine. But then you look at it and, it's like, it's not completely symmetric, like this is rotated slightly, like, so what? For this piece, this makes it even cooler, I think. For some other pieces, maybe not. I also kept this handle piece here. There is actually a thread here, so I could thread something in with a bolt and attach something like that, maybe some sort of a mask or I don't know, something in the future. But this is it for now. This has great mobility now. Oh, and I've also updated the neck thingy because it was like, having moved this part that I've cut out of here, I have moved it behind here, so this doesn't stay unpadded. So with this up here, the hard part especially, I was having difficulties getting in and out because this used to be just like a cheap one size belt, and now it's an adjustable with a D-ring and one of them clasps. So yeah, I can adjust this now, I can unclip this now and take this off easily. And the belly attachment is still just the good old, not very super duper elaborate piece of rubberized belt. So it just, slides on and off. When I take this off, I just open this and slide this over my head. So, frying pans in the apocalyptic costuming, I think it's totally a thing. And now let's check out how I have managed to turn a frying pan into this. It was actually a lot easier than I expected. So it starts with this frying pan, from which I remove the handle by unscrewing this bolt that holds it in place, and then I hold it to my body and make some markings here, 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 and here to indicate where I want the cuts. That is because, as you have seen before, on the sides I want less material to enable some freedom of movement for my arm, and I want these parts to stay there and to be bent out to cover a bit more of me. Then I use the ruler and use the 90-degree line indicated here virtually by this grip attachment point to transfer the markings to the other side of the frying pan, leaving me with something like this. They are not very precise, but I want them to be at least at the same height, Then I clamp it into my vise and use my hand metal saw, muscle powered. This way around didn't work with the clamping, so I turned it around so I can use this edge, so I can just really saw into it. And this has worked. It wasn't too bothersome, but it gave me a bit trouble because this is really wobbly and unstable despite being clamped, just due to it being, a frying pan in its original condition. It's not the greatest thing to clamp and to try to saw into. Which is why I did not use an electric saw. That would have been disastrous. It would have probably ended in an accident because this thing was just wobbling. So it leaves me with two cuts like this, and this I have bent out just by hand. Looks like this, and after that I continue to hammer it out on this solid metal block, and I'm hammering on this edge right here to make it flatter, leaving me with something like this. I repeat the whole process a bunch of times until it looks like this. I'm not too worried about it being bent really awkwardly and nastily in some parts, because, well, this part specifically will be removed right here. This is a really ugly looking bend here. And the others I can correct later on. For now, I'm just worried about, removing all the material that I need to remove. Corrections come later. So I mark out where my arms will be, so the sides of the chest, and I remove those parts. Looks something like this. This part right here was nasty. It is the steel plate that is attached to the bottom of the frying pan. At least I believe it's steel. And it was attached firmly enough to kind of stay there, but not firmly enough to stay there once I have done a cut through it and the rest of the frying pan. So it leaves me a nasty edge like this, which would definitely get caught on things, scratch things and people up. This is just bad. So I need to remove that. First I tried to remove it just locally, because I thought, hey, this plate right here, it's attached really well to the frying pan. I have no chance of pulling it off entirely. So I just do a Dremel cut here, but it didn't quite work. You can see this dark nasty edge here, and it still stands up a bit, and there was no good way to really get rid of that. So some of those edges were really easy to lift, leaving again a sharp, small, nasty edge like this, which I tried to remove with my clippers and stuff, but then again the problem just persisted and persisted until I've decided to just take my screwdriver and to pry off this thing carefully, which worked a lot better than I expected. Here you can see it halfway removed, revealing this beautiful shiny metal underneath it, leaving me with a nice, really contrasted graphical pattern, which I love. So this was a good idea to remove this thing. The thing itself looks like this, and some of you would be like, oh, hey, this looks like you can use it for something else, blah, blah, blah. Well, first of all, there is a kitchen device. I think it was some sort of a salad tool or some sort of a steam colander thing, which kind of looks like a metallic flower like this, but with separate petals. That is a much better option if you're looking for something like this. I've actually used pieces of that in some other builds because those are a bit thicker. This right here was really, really thin, and as you might have noticed, I hate working with metal that is too thin, so I just chuck this. Here you can see me holding this to the padding piece, by the way, before I have removed that metal part that sits on top. I do this again and again as I work to just check out whether or not the shapes I'm cutting are, actually doing anything good. So checking your work sometimes is a good idea. So with the top part removed and stuff, I go over the whole thing with my power file and also with my regular file in the creases here, for example, where I can't get with my power file. And I also use some sandpaper in there. So the idea was that the entire perimeter of this thing, like all of its edges, are sanded and filed down to no longer have any burrs and no longer have any sharpness. I've considered attaching it this way around, and this would have given me even more chest mobility. The next day, when I continued with the build, I have just forgotten I wanted to do it this way and have done it the way you have seen now. Figures. It still works. Happy accidents, whatever. Too lazy to unbolt it and flip it around. It works. I proceed with the central detail. I attached this red sticker foil to the center of it to cover all the frying pan logo stuff going on in the middle. And then I add this red ring. I just lay it flat there, and it is held down by the pressure from this metallic part, into which I drill 2 holes and just bolt it. And then I attach this thread cutter to the middle using another bolt. Now this design-wise works really well because this is another shiny metal piece with circular pattern to it, which echoes the outside pattern, but in a different, more powerful way, because this is also a 3D shape. It has depth. It's not just a pattern.
it has a lot more depth. I mean, these have too, some minimal depth, but this has a lot of depth. So it really focuses the piece on the center. What you see me doing here is removing some paint from the edges of this black painted metallic piece to make it look more distressed and used and scratched. Now, with these two bolts, I have attached this padding piece. By the way, if you haven't seen my video about bolts, see that if you're interested in my technique, how I do that. I'm skipping all the details for now in this video. So I use these two bolts and washers on the other side to attach this part of the padding, which I have removed from this side, just using my scissors because there is really nothing but fabric and foam in there. And I also remove the other side's curve here, allowing me more freedom of movement and also balancing the piece visually. And to the edges of that new cut here and here, I apply some diluted fabric paint using this sponge. Here you can see this, and this bolt right here. And those are holding this whole piece to the padding, while this and this bolt are holding this padding piece to the metal piece. It's a bit convoluted, but there was no good way to attach the padding part on top here to the padding beneath it. If there was, I would have done it, but this padding on top, it literally ends almost like after the bolt. There isn't enough space to attach it, directly to the padding. I did not attach the piece in the center here. I might add those bolts so that, you can't really slide any hands or whatever that easily under there. But my idea for now was that maybe I want to attach another layer, like stick it some sort of like another cool looking material under the metal, but on top of the fabric, so it sticks out on the sides a bit, and I would just pull it through the middle, and while it's still not attached, I can still do that. But if I was sure there will nothing else be going under this metal material in between those two layers here, I would have also added some bolts here and here, just for consistency, because I like to have my attachment every 10 centimeters or so. In here, it's a lot more. I've had another problem after all this. My big head wasn't fitting through this hole anymore, as I've mentioned before, because of this top part right here and this fixed belt. So to remedy that, on the one side I just put a D-ring, so I loop the belt around and connect it with a bolt to itself. And on the other side, I extend this belt's side with another belt on which there is this clasp. And there it is. Now it is adjustable and removable. So, I hope you liked this video. If so, then like, comment, subscribe, and also support me on Patreon, which is linked in the link in the description below. Also in the description below is linked the Nuclear Snail community group, in which you can share your works, meet other people doing this post-apocalyptic crafting thing, not miss any updates from me, and so on and so forth. So, I will see you in the next episode. Have fun crafting. Until then, hail the snail, and goodbye.